one of, if not the biggest game of the day. Number 2, Ohio State traveling to Happy Valley to take on number 13, Penn State. Currently, we're looking at Ohio State around 15.5, over under around 62. Is anybody getting in on the Buckeyes going on the road and what appears to be one of the very few tests on this Ohio State schedule, given the caliber of this team and the opponents that are left?
Is it a test? I don't know if it's going to be that much of a test.
I said it appears. And because it is on the road against a team that you said yourself, they had their best offensive performance of the season against Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Minnesota and Ohio State, same thing. No, I have a lock for this one. It's not on the spread, although because I think Ohio State will cover, but Penn State just does such a good job of keeping these games close lately that I'm not going to bet it. But I'm taking the under simply because you mentioned Penn State's offensive performance last week. When Penn State's at its best this year, it's been when it's able to run the football. It was able to run the football against Minnesota. It's been able to run the football in other games. Wasn't able to run the football against Purdue. Struggled, had to come back and win that game. Wasn't able to run the football at all, really, against Michigan. Got blown out of the water there. And I don't think it's going to be able to run the football all that well against Ohio State. So I don't think the Nittany Lions are going to score very many points. Like, I would also consider betting their team total under. But I also think on the other side, we talked about it on the show last week. Ohio State's offense was not sharp last week. They struggled in the red zone. They struggled in the passing game. They finally got things going in the second half as Iowa kind of checked out because the game was over. But I think that this Penn State defense, particularly in the secondary, while there's nobody in the country that's going to be able to match up with the Buckeyes in that aspect, they could do a better job of it than most teams, at least most of the teams Ohio State's going to see on the schedule this year. So I think the Buckeyes will probably struggle a little bit more than we're used to. So I think the total is just a little bit high here at 62. I'm going to take the under.
Lock it up.
Ooh, nice.
And give me the Nittany Lions. James Franklin has never lost by more than 14 points to Ohio State in his tenure there. Now, he hasn't won. He hasn't been great either. But I think a lot of the points you hit on, I think Manny Diaz is going to figure out a way to pressure C.J. Stroud somewhat. Now, I don't think by any means they're shutting down this Ohio State offense. But I thought the Iowa game was interesting. They were kind of sputtering along. They had those 3 drives. They had to settle for field goals. I think Penn State could even frustrate them more, create some turnovers. We did see the turnover last week. Like, oh, what happened there? And I think if you hit C.J. Stroud, he's like every other quarterback, and he doesn't get hit that much because they're so good and then get rid of the football. And I totally agree with you on the secondary is going to be one of the better secondaries they will face this year. I think this is a better matchup for Penn State than Michigan was, where Michigan just lined up and said, we're going to cram it down your throat. And they struggle with that. Now, Ohio State might do that, but that's not who they are. That's who Michigan is. Plus that game in Ann Arbor, this one in Happy Valley, I think it's too many points here in this kind of rivalry game. I think it'll be a good crowd too, despite I don't like the noon kickoff. I wish they could do a whiteout. I don't know why they only do a whiteout once a year. Why can't you do it during the daytime? I have a lot of questions about that, but one thing I don't question, Penn State's fans will be loud. They'll be ready to go, and it'll be a hostile environment. I think that could slow down Ohio State's offense.
Big dude Saturday.
The whiteout during the daytime, I don't think it pops as much as it does at night.
Is the stripe out?
It's the stripe out.
Yeah. Is that going to pop?
It'll look fine. Yeah. Anybody else got any action on this game? And as you mentioned, James Franklin, not great at beating Ohio State on the field, but fantastic at cashing these tickets at the window. Penn State covering in this series more often than not since Franklin took over in the Nittany Lions. Anybody else got any thoughts or action here?
I made it 59, so I need like another point to bet it, but I think that's probably the side I would be on. My one real concern here with betting under is if Penn State just knows its run game is dead in the water and comes out and says, hey, we're not trying to keep this close. We're trying to just win the ball game, which, I mean, obviously like no coach is ever going to admit you're not trying to win, but some of these coaches do coach to expectation. I think James Franklin is going to try to win this game, right? Like he doesn't have any job security concerns. If they get blown out, who cares? I mean, he's owed like $70 million, and they should be a pretty damn good football team next year, I think, based on the age of this roster. So if they come out chucking a lot, then that's how we lose this total, I think. If Penn State tries to establish the run early and all that kind of stuff, then I think we're the right side.
Yeah, Franklin did say in his press conference yesterday, he said, if you're going to beat this team, you need to try new things in all aspects of the game. So I think that means he's going to be pulling some tricks out of the bag just to see what he's got. But going back to the wideout thing, maybe they should do it during the day, because maybe if you're the CJ Stroud and you're dropping back to pass and you're looking down the field and you see a bunch of Penn State defenders wearing white, blending in with all white in the crowd as the sun shining off it, maybe it gets a little more harder to find your guys.
Reflection to blind the opposing quarterback.
Just
Good ideas here on the Cover 3 podcast. All right, turning our attention to the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. It is Florida and Georgia in Jacksonville, an environment unlike any other in college football, a house divided. 22.5 is the spread in this rivalry game. Georgia heavily favored against the unranked Gators. 56.5 is the total. Anybody getting in on this? Under.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, you too? Yeah, let's go.
no.
First of all, Georgia unders, right? I mean, just roll the ball out there like Johnny Jones used to do for the LSU basketball team. You know, just sure, Georgia unders. We can get to the NCAA tournament like that. I also think that when you look at Florida, it is a team that what they do best is run the football with their running backs, but also with their quarterback in Anthony Richardson. And they do not have a really dynamic downfield passing attack. I see this being a situation where Florida's best chance to not get blown out is to try and put together long drives as much as you can, you know, maybe dink and dunk, little piece, play some field position. And this is shocking to say in a rivalry game, look ahead spot for Georgia, where Georgia just wants to get up and then put this thing in cruise control, end it as fast as possible with Tennessee on deck next week, a game that will be more exhausting than this one. So yeah, give me the under 56.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I agree, especially on the part about once Georgia gets its lead in this game and gets this one done, it's got bigger fish to fry next week against Tennessee. It will park it and just get through the game. And I also think you mentioned, like, Anthony Richardson is at his most dangerous in the Florida offense when things break down and he scrambles and he makes things happen. He extends drives. It's a pain in the butt for other defenses. The problem is Anthony Richardson usually isn't facing other defenses that are full of 11 guys that are just as big and fast as he is. And that's going to make it more difficult for him to scramble and get those kind of yards. I think Georgia's going to be able to kind of keep him in the pocket, force him to beat him from there. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that consistently. I think Florida's offense is going to struggle because of it. And like you said, Chip, I think once Georgia gets its lead and this thing's over, they're just kind of going to pack it in and get ready for the Vols.
My one concern is, like, it's not that Georgia went all out aggressive when it played Oregon. And Oregon's defense is pretty similar to UF's in terms of defensive effectiveness. So I bet over here at open, 51.5. I made this 58.5. Like, I think that Georgia could have, 40 with 10 minutes left in the game. And my other problem here is, like, Napier really coached to win the game, not just keep it close against Tennessee. And so if he does that again, like, coaches that go for fourth downs, I'm adding points to their total because it makes them more likely to win the game and increases their point expectancy. So if he's doing that, they may score another touchdown because they convert, and they may also give Georgia the ball at the 41 time. So maybe Georgia gets one. Also, do you trust Richardson not to throw a pick six in this game? Because I don't. I mean, this is the game that got Mullen fired last year, right? Because it was close up until half, and then two defensive scores or scores set up by defensive scores. I see where Chip's going with this, though. It makes a lot of sense. I can't bet over 56, but I don't know, man. What if Florida scores it all?
Georgia 34, Florida 7.
Yeah, that's the score of
last year. That's
LSU,
why
LSU had touchdowns on their first 7 drives, and they were all over 50 yards.
That's why you take Georgia and you lay the points and you don't sweat the total. Give me the dogs. Lock it up. Lay the points. Last year you mentioned 34-7. I think Georgia's figured things out a lot. There was that bump spot, the little rough patch with Kent State, and then almost losing to Missouri. They bounced back, and I know it's our guy Barton and Vanderbilt, 55-0. I think the offense has a chance to get a little bit healthier. This is a game. I mean, Kirby was talking about the home and home stuff. He knows the importance of recruiting in this game. I think he wants to put on a show. I don't worry about look-ahead game in a rivalry game. I think they want to show out. I think the Oregon, win looks even more impressive. I think that's the version of Georgia that you'll get in this one. I think they blow them out.
Also in the 3:30 p.m. Eastern time window, number 9 Oklahoma State going to Manhattan to take on number 22 Kansas State. Both teams coming off. No, actually, not both teams coming off. Both teams with one loss, in Big 12 play. So as we continue to look at the Big 12 title race, has a little bit of a feel of an elimination game potentially, or at least one that will be very, very important come the end of November. Kansas State currently listed as a 1.5 point favorite, over under around 56. Injury questions abound with this matchup. Anybody got any feels or a lock that they want to put on the record?
For me to take this, what's that? What's the total on this right now?
56.
Man, like, do we think Wegman's playing, right?
What? Oklahoma State and Kansas State.
Oh shoot, I'm sorry. I was looking at wrong number. Yeah, give me Kansas State.
Did you mean Adrian Martinez? Is that who you were talking?
I was looking at my wrong set of notes here. I was like, wait, what?
That is the question too. Is Adrian Martinez playing? Because I think if he is, then I love your side.
I'm cool with Howard playing.
But Howard's questionable too.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think I don't think you're going to be out without both of them. If they do, I'll take a loss. But I'm okay with that. I think that Kansas State is the right side here. I think they're going to be better on the lines of scrimmage. And man, Oklahoma State has had just such a game effort. We got a lot of crap from their fans for saying they were not a legit top 10 team. And I think that's accurate based on what we've seen. But they're a top 20-ish level team, maybe top 15. And they have played really hard and really smart over the last couple of weeks through a bunch of injuries. But now the injuries keep piling up. They got guys banged up again on the offensive line. If you watch the end of that game, they had another dude go down there on the O-line. One of their best DBs looked like he had to me, it looked like a real leg injury at the end after he made that pick. So I'm just wondering at some point, does it catch up to you, man? Like that's a lot of hard games in a row. All the injuries piling up. I know Kansas State's got some guys out too, but I'm going to ride with K-State here in Manhattan.
In general, if Adrian Martinez plays, I think Kansas State probably wins this game. But the questions all over the status of pretty much everybody involved in that offensive backfield has me falling short. I don't know, but do you think this number would jump at all if all of a sudden we got some confirmation? Like I don't even know. I think
the number implies that Howard is going to be able to play. Like I don't think there's no way in hell, based on what we saw last week, that Kansas State would be a favorite if the betting markets believed that it was the number 3 guy. So maybe it's some sort of like odds hedge where it's like, hey, what are the odds that both are out? That could be, but I think this number probably implies it. By the way, can I get -1? We got a couple -1s out there just in case I can get push protection on that.
Yep.
Oklahoma
you know what I'm saying?
Like banged up too. They got a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tough. I mean, a game of survival in Manhattan, as they do tend to be. Any wind report?
Not off the top of my head. Now I don't have anything available in front of me, but I will say I'm not locking anything up. But if Adrian Martinez does start and we see this line move in Kansas State's direction, I will bet Oklahoma State. If Will Howard is starting and the line is still Oklahoma State getting 1.5 or 2, I will bet Oklahoma State. I'm just not going to lock it up at this number. I want to know the situation before I bet it.
Oklahoma State.
Texting Tom to save the juice.
All right, in prime time, number 3 Tennessee back in action at home, hosting number 19 Kentucky. Beer barrel rivalry. As the Wildcats come to town again ahead of that Tennessee Georgia game that we've been had our eyes on as soon as that knuckleball of a field goal went through the uprights, and those uprights went into the Tennessee River. Tennessee favored by 12.5 in this game, over under of 62. Anybody got a lock? And if we don't have any locks, then let's definitely get some thoughts on one of the biggest games of the weekend.
Oh, I've got a lock.
Let's go.
Give me the Vols. Lay them all. I do not care. Kentucky's not going to be able to keep up with this game. How are the Wildcats, with an offense as bad as it's been, going to keep up with Tennessee, who put up 52 points on Alabama and is putting up at least 40 on just about anybody? They walk on the field and they score 40. And on the other side of the ball, like, they're good defensively. And where are they at their best defensively? in the run game. What's the only way Kentucky really has to beat you is by trying to run the ball at you, but they haven't been very good. They have to depend too much on Will Levis, kind of YOLO shots deep down the field. And when they connect, Kentucky scores, but they don't connect often enough to put together consistent drives and put together enough points on the board. And furthermore, Tennessee ranks 10th nationally in pressure rate against opposing quarterbacks. Kentucky's offensive line, I think, was 106th nationally in pressure rate allowed. Doesn't strike me as a very good sign for Will Levis. He's going to be running for his life a lot in the pocket back there. I think Tennessee is going to win this one comfortably, and it's going to be a similar situation to Georgia. They're going to get out ahead early, and maybe they take their foot off the gas to, get ready for Georgia. But as we saw last week, it was covering against UT Martin, took its foot off the gas in the second half, really kind of stopped playing. UT Martin scored to cover the spread, and what did Tennessee do? It immediately went back to 100 miles per hour on offense to make sure it covered the spread. That's a coach who knows what he's doing. So I think they're going to cover the spread against Kentucky too. It's a rivalry.
I mean, this game was 45-42 last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. I look at this. Tennessee had a 71-yard touchdown pass, a 72-yard touchdown pass, a 37-yard touchdown run, a 58-yard pick six. Basically, all their scores were explosive in this one. My guess here, and this is just a guess, I would need a couple more points to bet this, but Chip asked for our thoughts if we don't have an actual bet.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you that Mark Stoops plays this very conservatively on the back end and says, Tennessee, show me that you can execute in the red zone against us over and over again. Because defensive coaches who get embarrassed by just allowing explosive plays constantly probably don't want that to happen in back-to-back years. So I do lean under here. And I think that Chris Rodriguez is one of the most efficient backs in the SEC, despite the fact that Kentucky's offensive line has taken a bit of a step back this year. He does a great job of not getting stopped behind the line of scrimmage. If this steamed up again, I would probably take some Kentucky, but at 12.5, it's just not enough for me. I want the 2 touchdowns.
So if it got to 14, you would maybe take some Kentucky.
At 14, I'm taking some Kentucky. I think you have to.
And if this got to 63 or over,
not have to, but
would you take the under?
Yeah, 63.5, I would take under.
Dan, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous for Tennessee. Last week felt like the hangover game, but they came out 52-7. But I think Kentucky, they've been really good with Stoops against quality opponents. I think what Bud is saying, force them to drive the length of the field. Don't give up the big plays. See if you can frustrate Hendon Hooker. If you can pressure him, run the football against this defense. I mean, as great as we're talking about Tennessee, and they've been great. They've been a story of the college football season. Pitt had them in overtime with a backup quarterback. They are susceptible. That offense is scary, though. That's why I'm not going to touch it. But if it gets, I'm kind of with Bud. I was tempted to just top here and take Kentucky here with those points, but I would wait. If it does get to 14, I'll take it during the game or right before the game.
Takes one show off, and you guys just abandon ship. I swear to God.
All right.
We know this show's getting popular. We have people tweeting me immediately about Tennessee's red zone stats, which, I get they're great, but most defensive coaches are going to be like, I'm not going to get embarrassed and allow 5 scores of 40 plus again this year. So I'm going to dare you to be that great in the red zone again, which they may well be because Hendon Hooker's 100 years old and super experienced, and they don't really miss down there. But
Will Rogers was lighting up the SEC and then only put up 17 against Kentucky. And I get this offense isn't exactly the same, and I get that Hendon Hooker is more mobile and can do more, but they did a pretty good job against that offense.
I think
fans, Bud Elliott 3. Let them know those red zone numbers.
Yeah, I lean Vols. Not a lock, but definitely a lean for me.